Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulihi Kareem. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this opportunity to be with each other this lovely morning in Los Angeles. Assalamu alaikum, and a very, very beautiful morning to all of you. And a good afternoon to the panelists from Colorado and Washington, D.C., and other brothers and sisters joining us from UK, South Africa, and from Malaysia. My name is Shakil Sayed. I am going to be your host this morning. And on behalf of the ICNA Islamic Circle of North America Council for Social Justice, I thank each one of you for joining us this morning from wherever you may be. And this is our solidarity response to the call out by our brothers and sisters in Kashmir in their right of self-determination and for full freedom from the 7 decades of brutal occupation of India. Before we invite our esteemed speakers to share their remarks this International Day of Solidarity with Kashmir, I would like to invite Dr. Zahid Bukhari, the Executive Director of Islamic Circle of North America Council for Social Justice, to share a few words about its work, and then we will move to the speakers, inshallah. Dr. Zahid. And as we are waiting for Dr. Zahid, just a disclaimer, today we have 6 panelists plus Dr. Zahid from different places. It's very likely that we might run into tech problems, so my advance apologies.
No, hopefully. I was muted. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Really, thank you very much. I personally like to say from my bottom of my heart to thank you all of our speakers, presenter, and from all over the globe, alhamdulillah. So because this is the day that we like to show the global solidarity for Kashmir issue. So we thought that it is good to have a global speakers and global audience. ICNA Council for Social Justice, I think we have been doing work for the social justice causes in the United States about racism, poverty and hunger and inequality and immigration. All those issues we are doing a lot of things, rallies and webinar and different policy program. But also on the global injustice issues, Kashmir is for us #1 issue. And we have been working on that issue we work with other groups to have congressional hearing and also different webinars, billboards, rallies all over the United States. So we are doing that. But I'd like to just mention 2 points, if possible, this year or next year, we like to achieve, if possible. I understand that today several webinars are going on all over the globe on Kashmir, the Solidarity Day, Global Solidarity Day. But we are thinking living here in America and probably in other Western, in the European Union and also England, if possible, I think these governments and these state departments, if they can assign a special representative for Kashmir issue. No need to explaining all those international issues and reasons, other thing. But if these governments, like US government and European Union, if they have already done wonderful, and the British Parliament, if they can assign a special representative for this issue to work on that, to resolve that, I think that could be one achievement. We are also planning, if possible, to have hearing again on this issue. #2 aspect is that is happening, I understand, in USA, in European Union, and also in England, that the Hindutva organization, this Hindu fascist organizations working in these part of the world, in the United States, we understand, in Canada, in European Union, and England, and they are working exactly with the white supremacist group, the right-wing extremist group, and they are working together. They are the new champion of Islamophobia. They are working against Kashmiri causes. So somehow some legislation, some awareness is also needed what Hindutva organizations, for example, in the United States, what they are doing in the European Union, in Canada, in England, what they are doing. They are working in cultural field, they are working in political field, they are working in social field. Here in America, they are doing something about textbooks also. But they are the prime reason they are working with the partnership with other very right-wing extremist group. They are working against the causes of all these self-determination and democracy and whatever India is doing in Kashmir and even in India, they are very much supporting them. So I think so. Number one cause is that if these governments they can appoint at the State Department and whoever the department is relevant in other part of the world, special representative for Kashmir, as they have some time with the Palestinian issue. So if they can do that, and also they issue reports as United Nations is the I think issue a report. Last year they missed that. Hopefully they will issue this report. We should have more pressure on that. And also I think the Hindutva organization in this part of the world, they are working very much with the other extremist group, right wing, and somehow if we can expose them. So that is a request. This is the one of the webinar, alhamdulillah, we are arranging. We are planning a lot of other activities in the United States on Kashmir issue, raising the awareness also in the legislative, in Congress, in State Department. So whatever we can do with partnership with other groups, we will be planning to do that. We need your more cooperation, as I'm glad. And again, thank you very much participating in this webinar organized by ICNA Council for Social Justice. Thank you very much.
Jazakumullah khairan, Dr. Zahid Bukhari. Appreciate all the work under your leadership that's happening for social justice in North America and beyond. Before I invite our first speaker, some simple housekeeping for those of you who are watching from wherever. This program is being recorded and it will be available on icnacsj.org. And those of you who can, do please share this link with your friends and family, invite them to join as well. And if you are active on social media, today's hashtag is Stand with Kashmir, and do please include at @ICNACSJ as well. Those of you who are watching on other platforms, you're welcome to plug in your questions or comments as you will hear the speakers. We will try to consolidate as many questions as possible and pick those that are relevant for today and then try to answer as many as possible. But if not, then we will still save them and then try to answer them online later. Request to speakers, you all are requested to share your reflections, remarks for 10 minutes or so. And when it's in 8-minute mark, I will give you a V sign. That means you have about another 2 minutes to, inshallah, wrap up. And when we are not speaking, try to mute yourself and then unmute when you are invited to speak. With that, again, a disclaimer, there are people from across the world, and inshallah, we will do our very, very best to keep this as seamless as possible. But if in case there are any difficulties, technical difficulties, please bear with us. We will work through them, inshallah. Our first speaker will be from United Kingdom. Dr. Afzal Khan is a member of British Parliament and is the shadow deputy leader of the House of Commons. Prior to being elected as a member of the Parliament, Dr. Afzal was a member of the European Parliament for North West England, where he served as Vice President of Security and Defence. Dr. Afzal was awarded the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, the Commander of the Order of the British Empire, also known as the CBE Award, for building bridges across the communities in UK and between Pakistani and British populations. Earlier, Dr. Afzal was also awarded the Sitara-e-Qaid-e-Azam, the highest civilian honor for his contribution for the people of Pakistan, within Pakistan and in diaspora. Dr. Khan holds honorary doctorates from the Government College University in Lahore and Mirpur University of Science and Technology. Dr. Afzal Khan will offer his remarks and reflections about how the European Union and UK United Kingdom sees the Kashmiri struggle for freedom for about 10 minutes. Dr. Afzal Khan, please, the floor is yours. Unmute yourself, please.
Not unmute.
There we go. Now you're good. Jazakallah
Okay.
khair.
I think you have unmuted me now.
You're good now.
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum to my all esteemed guest speakers here as well. First of all, it's indeed a pleasure to join all of you and together on this important day of solidarity with the Kashmiri people. So I suppose it's not difficult to remember this fact that well over 70 years this issue has been unresolved. And sadly for the Kashmiri people, by the day, the atrocity against them are getting worse and worse. So what they are experiencing currently, particularly after the August 2019, it is a huge oppression. All the world has experienced COVID-19, but the COVID-19, the Kashmiris, you could say, is the double whammy that they're going through. In every walk of life, they're being basically shattered, whether it's education, whether it's economy, whether it's the internet, whether it's just going about their business. So every walk of life of theirs has been hugely impaired and caused lots of difficulty, and not to mention the whole still killing that is going on, the rape that is still taking place there, and not to mention this changes in international law, which to what India has done in the August 2019, both in the context of changing the demographic, but also, I would say, simply stealing the land of the Kashmiri people. So in all sorts of different ways, we have these difficulties. But then when you sort of step back and look at it, then how come, one of the oldest disputes not being resolved? And the more you look at it, then you see why people say it's complex. But to me, ultimately, it's not complex whatsoever. There may be various reasons, and then you have different disputes globally. But in this dispute, what I find interesting is that the solution, in a sense, has been agreed. It's in the U.S. Security Councils, and it's simply a question of implementation. So the world community has not had the will to ensure that this has happened, and the result is there's so much suffering for the Kashmiri people. And then if we break it down further down, what is it? Do we not want to see international law being applied? Of course, we all understand it's important. Then if you look at the human rights idea, we know that human rights are universal, and we all have a responsibility to that. And it doesn't matter whether you're one part of the world or which other part of the world. We all have a responsibility, and there is a human rights violation taking place, all parliamentarians in particular have a responsibility to speak out. So why is it that things are not taking forward? And then, of course, when we talk about the context of the West, or we talk about the European Union, where I've had the honor to serve in the European Parliament.
Brother Afzal, sorry to interrupt you. We cannot hear you properly. Is it possible that you get either closer to the microphone or raise the volume a little bit? It's crackling quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm getting cracking from my side as well, actually, when anybody's speaking. So I'm not sure what exactly.
If you have a set of speakers next to your laptop, then you might like to turn them on. There is an echo on your end.
Okay, let me see if I can do anything about that.
You can say something and then let me see if I can hear you well. Sorry about that. I'm sure this will happen more than once. So those of you who are online listening to this wonderful program, be patient. People in Kashmir have been patient for 70 years. A minute or two, inshallah, is not going to break us in. Brother Wakhas, if you can hear me, can you see Brother Afzal online? We lost him, it seems, or he's in a different window. And there, you're back. Unmute yourself, Brother Afzal. There you go.
I don't
Bismillah.
know if it's better, but I can still hear the crackling. Can you hear it better now?
Slightly, but not a whole lot. Continue on. Continue on. Bismillah, please go ahead. Go ahead. But Afzal, if you are having difficulty, we can fix that. We can come back to you. In the meantime, we can go to Brother Dr. Mubin Shah, inshallah. Would that work? All right. So, Dr. Afzal, you can mute yourself and see. We hate to miss what you're going. Perfect. So you mute yourself and see what you can do to fix it. In the meantime, we'll go to Dr. Mubin Shah, inshallah. Brother Mubin Shah, Dr. Mubin Shah, is an international businessman from Kashmir and has led the Kashmir Chamber of Commerce and Industry for many years. Dr. Shah has been an activist during his student years in medical school and was elected as the Secretary General of the Students' Union of the Government Medical College in Srinagar. For his activism and for calling out the gross human rights violation of Kashmiri people by the Hindu nationalist government, Dr. Shah was accused of a very serious charge, rather, sedition, for simply posting some social media posts. And he was imprisoned in 2019 before he was released, rightfully so. Dr. Shah will share his remarks about the human rights violations in Kashmir and also, if you feel comfortable, of your personal experiences with the Indian regime. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Mubin Shah. Dr. Shah, it's all yours.
Assalamu alaikum. I thank ICNA to give me an opportunity to talk today on in a very important day of 5th February as the Kashmir Solidarity Day. And as rightly said by Brother Shakil, that I have to talk about human rights, which violations which have been done by India and of which I have myself suffered. Although my suffering was nothing in comparison to what my Kashmiri brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, as well as children have suffered in the last 73 years, day in and day out. I want to point out very, very important thing in the human rights thing, that we need to have a very, very clear narrative that the most human right violation, the most important human right violation in Kashmir is not of not giving the right of self-determination. which is an integral element of basic human rights and fundamental freedoms. Until it is not addressed, we will not get justice, and the human rights violation will continue. This is very important because I have seen and I have observed all these years in activism that whenever people talk about, they focus on the human rights violations. Yes, that is there, but what gives the reason to these human rights violations is that basic right of self-determination, which has been refused to us for all these years. And although it has been guaranteed or approved by the UN Security Council, and although in a lot of cases it has been done and implemented, and unfortunately in our case, because of certain reasons, previously because of the Cold War, the Soviet Union used to veto, they thrice vetoed that, and to implement those UN Security Council resolutions. And now we are feeling that, because India is positioning itself as a bulwark for the European, for the Western world against China. So we may be again caught in that crossfire, and we will still we left like that, and we will not get that right of self-determination. Now, what has been the problem because of not giving the right of self-determination? What has been the result? The result has been that almost, more than 100,000 people have got killed. 150,000 civilians have been arrested up to date from 1990, I'm talking about. 8,500 custodial killings, 12,000 disappearances, and 110,000 structures have been destroyed in arson, and 11,170 rape cases. And the number of injured people are running in hundreds of thousands, with at least 7,000 with pellet injuries, and out of them, about 700 are with eye injuries, resulting in blindness of different levels. If we total these figures, I'm talking as a doctor also, basically, because basically I'm a doctor by education, but by practice a businessman. That if you add up all these numbers, it comes to about 400 to 450,000 people. And our society is a very closely knit society, and extended family, about 10 people, for each person. For example, if I am arrested, minimum 10 people of my family will get affected. My brothers, my children, and all the, minimum I'm talking about 10. There's about 4.5 million people will be affected straight away, who are directly affected, leaving aside the indirect affected people who are in a locality, in a village, where a person gets killed, where a person gets injured, and you have almost the maximum is basically because the post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is prevalent in Kashmir. And now you have lately cases of people dying of heart attacks suddenly, young people, because there is so much tension and so much of trauma in all this. And people, and unfortunately, the world is not looking towards this. And I consider basically that it is genocide. It is genocide of our people, and it amounts to that. And this, because it is when you speak of genocide, there is clauses where when you are causing serious bodily or mental harm, as clearly India is doing under Article 2 of the Genocide Convention, as well as killing of a specific ethnic groups, and that is Kashmiris, and which amounts to Genocide Convention. This is the very important thing, because what needs to be done is that it has to be considered as a genocide. Besides, then only action can be taken by the international community. And we have to also understand that now thousands of injured people who cannot survive on their own, and particularly the people who have been injured by pellets, and they are blind. I have seen, when I was in the chamber as a past president, during the time when the pellets, people will come to our organization, and we had meetings, and at least 700 to 800 people who could not do any work. It is a humane problem to a greatest extent. And now, about 150,000 arrested up to date. And, from 1990, thousands of them are in jails in Kashmir, besides in far off place in India. Like I was taken to Agra for 4 months. I was in Agra for 4 months. And it was not at that time, there was no post of this, which you mentioned. It is now I am being charged for sedition after I left Kashmir, because I posted in a Facebook that something which is detrimental for Kashmiris, which I will discuss in the after some time. And besides this thing, this is very, very important, that we have to make our narrative based on the right of self-determination as the first human right violation. And then all these things come, the killings and everything and all that. And it's because I don't have so much time as such, but there has been, I have read it out. I can, the illegal offer by the Indian government contravenes multiple articles of 30 fundamental human rights stipulated in the UDHR. So the question is this thing, that we have to completely change our narrative to this thing, that until unless people do not understand this, that what we are aiming at. Because particularly the Western countries, I have seen a lot of work has been done by Mr. Afzal Khan and MPs and all, in particular in the Britain Parliament and all that. But what are we getting from there is basically on the human right part, this killings, this thing, that. But the basic thing is not being told by these people who matter, who there is no resolutions like that in these parliaments. That is the very important part. That until that is not given, everything will continue being happening. Now, let me tell you one thing more. That being that what people in Kashmir are scared of at this point and worried about after August 9, 2019 is the allowing of the land to be sold to outsiders, which was at least not allowed under a truncated 370 by abolition of 35A under a false pretext of non-development in Kashmir. These are all false pretexts, because I, being in the chamber, I recall when I had a meeting, and when that time Mufti Said was the chief minister, and we had a meeting in Dubai for calling investors. And there the Indian diaspora told Mufti Said that we will not come to Kashmir unless you don't remove the 370. And I had to get up and tell them that in Dubai you are having business, you are investments in a Muslim country without any citizenship. Now they are changing it, but that gentleman who spoke there, he was for 30 years in Dubai, and he had invested their money. I said, a businessman will come anywhere where he can make money. So this is a false pretext, and this is what Modi government has also used, a false pretext for non-development, because in Kashmir was allowing already land for lease for industries and all that for 90 years. So there is a false pretext. The second most important point is, under this pretext, what they are doing is they are thousands of hectares they are going to allot to businessmen from outside on pretext on some industries which may not come at all. But what we fear is that they will be using that for colonies subsequently. Because if they put up some factory, they will get workers from outside, and then put up those colonies in those type of lands. Number one. Number two is this issuance of domicile certificate to outsiders. First they did it for the purpose of to project it as a humanitarian action, because the West Pakistan refugees in Jammu had come, at partition, and they were in Jammu and they are not given. Let us be clear that no international humanitarian law can override the local laws meant to protect the survival, ethnic identity, and political rights of the people of the state which dispute it. You see, that is why government of India has been able to tell its side, but unfortunately we Kashmiris have not been able to tell our side to the world, that what is the problem. Now, what has happened? Now, what happened that after 2019 August, about 3.4 million domicile certificates have been issued, and and they have done it very, very, with a very deceptive motive. Deceptive motive in the sense that they have not kept a condition that the domicile certificate, we do not know. Nobody knows that out of these 3.4 domicile certificates, how many are non-natives and how many are natives. And we feel and fear that already 2 million non-natives have been given these domicile certificates. And what will happen? The majority at this point of time is in the Jammu part. About my reports are that almost 1.2 to 1.3 million are in the Jammu part, and it is basically the labor class which has been from in the factories working in Jammu.
Dr. Shah, sorry to interrupt you. You have about another 2 minutes to wrap up, inshallah. Sorry to interrupt you. Please go ahead.
So, besides this, the laws of AFSPA and PSA, maybe I will get more opportunity to talk about it. But now, what needs to be done? That is the important thing. First of all, to correct the narrative completely with right self-determination for Kashmir as the dominant narrative. The world needs to recognize the genocide has occurred in Kashmir because of silence. We need to point out that the world needs to settle Kashmir through implementation of Security Council's resolutions. And previously also I had made a presentation in somewhere that what we need to do is to get this solidarity from internationally is the need of international icons in the entertainment and sports fields to tell our narrative. And the Kashmir BDS movement and approaching international organizations like International Court of Justice, Internet, and importance of NRKs, non-resident Kashmiris, Friends of Kashmir, from different countries, particularly from Pakistan, Turkey, and to be tapped out to message to America and Europe and to the Muslim countries, is very, very important to tell our narrative that what is required and how it can be stopped. Otherwise, it will never be stopped. The Modi government is going on to its plans, and they will not stop it. And we will not have Kashmir with Kashmiris as such. There will be all people from all over India there. They have so many people that you can flood us within a year. There's no question about that. I think this is, I had to tell something more, but as my time is running out, I hope that I get some more time in the
Thank you so much, Dr. Shah. Thank you so much. May Allah bless you for sharing the macro and the micro, your personal story as well. And I would so love to hear more. And I have a bunch of questions that I have already noted, and I hope and pray that we'll get some time to check in, inshallah, on that. Dr. Afzal texted me that he could not resolve the technical difficulty he was having on his end. It is a major loss for all of us. May Allah give him the best, and we hold him in our dear hearts and thoughts, and applaud him for all that he is doing in his capacity as a member of parliament in UK to lift up the issue of Kashmir. With that, we would now go to Brother Qurban Hussain. If I know that you are here, and thank you so much for joining us as well. So a brief introduction of Brother Qurban Hussain, who has been living in England for about 5 decades, and his political life evolved from his early days in the trade union movement to then campaigning against the Iraq war, followed by joining the Liberal Democrats on the very day the Iraq war began on 20th of March 2003. In fact, Iraq invasion, I would say, not war. Iraq did not do anything to US. He was elected first as a councillor of the Luton Borough Council, followed by becoming a member of the House of Lords. Brother Hussain received the prestigious civil award Sitare-e-Qaid-e-Azam for his contribution toward the promotion of relations between the people of UK and Pakistan. And Brother Qurban, now you have dual responsibility of representing yourself and also your colleague, Brother Afzal Khan, who unfortunately could not be with us. So the floor is yours. Bismillah. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, please, if you don't mind. There you go. Shukran.
Auzubillahi min shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning, good afternoon, depending on which part of the world you are speaking from. May I first of all thank the organizers for uh, inviting me to take part in this webinar. It is an annual event that Kashmiris have been commemorating for many years all around the world to show solidarity with the people of Kashmir, and trying to get involved the indigenous communities, organizations, politicians to see what the Kashmiris are going through. And I have been part of the Kashmir self-determination movement for long before I became involved in the British politics. Being a Kashmiri origin myself, my family home is very close to the line of control in District Kotli in Azad Kashmir. And I have friends and relatives on both sides of the line of control, and hence I get information from both sides on a very regular basis, as well as through the other sources of information like the NGOs and so forth. May I just say that I have been raising the issue like many other MPs and lords in the British Houses of Parliament. From time to time, I can only say that it's never enough, but however, one can only do as much as he can. And although I have spoken on many issues, since I've been a member of the House of Lords, but the only issue which I have spoken most about in the House of Lords is the issue of Kashmir. And I think Dr. Mobeen was absolutely right when he was saying that the human rights include the right of self-determination, because the right of self-determination is the basic human right. And if people don't have that, then they are being deprived of the basic human rights. And I have always included this in my deliberations wherever I have been able to say that the Kashmiris are being not given their human rights, and the right of self-determination is one of those basic ones. May I just say that we are aware, as a British parliamentarian, I am aware, and we have an all-party parliamentary group in the parliament, which many colleagues, I think we have membership of close to 100 parliamentarians from all political parties, and we regularly meet and discuss what is happening in Kashmir, and try to raise questions. As you know, very recently there was a debate in the House of Commons, which was initiated by Member of Parliament from my town, Luton, and many other members participated in that. And we have taken a few delegations back to Azad Kashmir, seeing and talking to the refugees there who have fled from the Indian side. We have tried to visit Indian-held Kashmir, Indian-occupied Kashmir as well, but the Indian government has never cooperated and never allowed us to visit that side. That is a clear indication that if India hasn't got anything to hide, why would it not permit British parliamentarians to visit that part? And what we do is we get information from our own sources, as well as the internationally recognized organizations such as the Amnesty International, the Human Rights Watch, the United Nations Commission for Human Rights, and most certainly the United Nations Commission for Human Rights that presented a report in 2018 and 2019, which has asked for a delegation, a commission to be formed to go to Kashmir and investigate the human rights violations. It is noted, and the British government knows it very well, that India has flatly refused any investigation into that. And that again is another proof that India has got a lot to hide from the outside world. But we are pressing on the British government to do its best at the United Nations Security Council and other platforms for a United Nations commission to go in and investigate those human rights violations, which include illegal detentions, torture, rape, kidnapping, and so forth. And we are concerned about thousands of people who are detained illegally or under false allegations and false cases. And we are very aware leadership of like Shabir Ali Shah Saab, Asha Andrabi, Yasin Malik, and many more who are held in many prisons all over India. And the torture that goes on in many prisons, I have witnessed many witness statements and which have been presented to us in many places. And we try to present these reports wherever we can, and we are trying to gather more and more people who are actually from the government benches, because although we have worked very hard over the years, and I mean, I've been in the House of Lords for 10 years, but there are people who have been there for much longer than I have, or who were working before I went there. So a lot of work has gone into it, but what we have not been able to achieve was that not many people from the Conservative Party were actually supporting us. And now the All-Party Parliamentary Group has many members from the Conservative Party as well. And we are trying to get the government to move, because British government can play a crucial role in actually the things that we ask the British government to do is, first of all, to pressurize India to bring an end to the human rights violations, to the torture, to the illegal detentions, and release the prisoners, and lift the communication blockade. Um, to link their trade agreement with the human rights in Kashmir and other parts of India. And although British government is promising, and that is what they are going to do, we in the House of Lords only a few days ago rejected one of the amendments from the government when they wanted to have a trade agreement with countries, but they did not want to include the human rights. And we have in the House of Lords has rejected that, and they said, well, have a look at it again. We want the human rights clause to be included in our trade agreements all around the world, and certainly that will include India as well. So we are doing whatever we can. I am a prime witness of many people who have been directly affected by these human rights violations. I have visited the line of control a few times. I have seen directly people who have been hit by the shrapnels from across the line of control. I have met people who have shrapnels stuck in their skulls for life, and there are many injured people on the line of control as well. And what we are trying to do also is to tell the world Kashmir is surrounded by three nuclear powers: India, Pakistan, and China. The situation, the deteriorating situation of human rights inside Kashmir, and the violence on the line of control, it could change into an all-out war very quickly. And God forbid, if there is a war between three nuclear countries, it is not only going to be affected. It's not going to affect only the region, but it could become a disaster for the whole world. And therefore, it is paramount important for governments like Britain and those of you who are based in Canada or other places who are listening to this. I would say that every country matters. I think we need to raise it with every country we can to persuade India to come to negotiating table with Pakistan and give the Kashmiri people the right that everybody enjoys. We say to the British government here, what the Kashmiri peoples are asking for is the right of self-determination, which we have given to our people. We have given a referendum to the Scottish people, in the recent years. We have given a referendum to the British people on Brexit, and that is the right that the Kashmiri people are asking for.
I don't know if we lost Brother Qurban. It seems like we did lose him. But if you're hearing us, Brother Qurban, you're absolutely right. The right of self-determination supersedes all other issues. And we'll definitely touch base as we move forward on that to expand more. With that, we now go to South Africa. Brother Salman Khan is the founding chairman of South African Kashmiri Action Group and Kashmiri Center for African Union. And since the founding of the Kashmiri Action Group, Brother Salman continued to educate, organize, and mobilize the South African community through his talks in civic forums and presentations. He has also written many op-eds and articles about the freedom struggle of Kashmir and the human rights abuses by the Indian government. Brother Salman received several awards in South Africa by the Human Rights Foundation of South Africa in recognition of his work for the freedom of Kashmir. Regrettably, we are unable to see Brother Salman because of the bandwidth issue, but inshallah, we will be able to hear him share his reflections and experiences about how Kashmir's narrative is in South Africa and in African Union. Brother Salman, floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you for the kind invitation. I'm very humble and very privileged today to be between the Ari and the galaxy of such intellectuals, academic, activist leaders, and my leaders. Fasabbi bismi rabbikal a'la allazi, fasabbi bismi rabbikal a'la allazi, fasabbi bismi rabbikal a'la allazi. Glorify the Lord, the beautiful Lord, who created, who protected, who nourishes, and who look after whatever between the heaven and the earth. And all the praises to go to his beloved Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Before I go and continue my speech, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of course, the program director, Sayyid Shakil Sahab, Dr. Sayyid Bukhari, Lord Qurban Hussain, Dr. Mubin Shah, my friend, my leader, Dr. Imtiaz Khan, my friend and my Rehber, my mentor, Dr. Atta Zia, first time I will be interacting and listening to you, and Dr. Afzal Khan, and rest of my brother and sister across the world. Once again, I greet you with a greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. But with the tradition, as we say, Azadi, hum leke rahenge Azadi. In South Africa, when we start our speeches, when we start our any event, especially the political and revolutionary, we say Amandla, and the people shout away too. Amandla means power to the people, and the people shout back, yes, power to the people. So Amandla, away too. It's a somber moment. It's 73 years is gone, and we are commemorating yet again a Solidarity Day. Whether it's a Solidarity Day or whether it is a Kashmir Black Day, is it that what we are reduced to become a ritualistic and burn the candle and have few speeches and count the bodies year after year? How many people have lost their life? How many sisters of mine have been raped? I would not like to even say the word rape. I'd say undignified. We should be hanging our head down, but thinking, what's wrong with us? That every year we come, and it's no longer cannot be the business as usual, that we must come back and again on the different platform and have the sessions and sessions and sessions after like this. I think that has to come to the end. I think what I'm going to consume my time, whatever the time that I have, few minutes with you, is to let's have a brutal and honest introspection and a critical analysis of our success and our failure. Failure is 95%, and the success is only 5% that we managed to With the help of Pakistan, our good brother, doesn't matter how we criticize, we managed to keep the issue of Kashmir alive and is still an international disputed territory. Thanks to the Pakistan for their support, whatever it is and however it is, whatever the criticize we can give, we must say thank you to them. But let's do a critical and an honest and brute introspection and reflection on ourselves and look at the failure that where we went wrong. Where we went wrong. The history, we need to look at it. You know, when you do the strategic analysis of any project or any struggle, you got to look at the three things: the past, the future, the past, the present, and the future. Where we coming from, where we are today, and where we heading toward. Where we coming from, I think we can have all of us a PhD on the history, and I do not think so that will do us any good to repeat the history. We know where we went wrong. Many occasions that where we went wrong narrative. It has always been a debate where India win always a brownie point. It is a territorial issue, is a bilateral issue, and that's what we get hugged into. And then from the Tashkent Accord to Karachi Agreement to the Tashkent, from there to the Simla Accord, then to the what you call it, a Lahore Agreement, we have been gone into a wrong narrative. It had never been told the real story by the Kashmiri for the people of Kashmir. It is not a territorial issue. It is an international disputed issue. It is an issue of a 14 million Kashmiri people. It is the issue of a land of 86,000 kilometers. It is the issue of a most strategic position of a land, a Kashmir, which lies between the India, Pakistan, and China. So, my dear brothers and sisters, before I go into talk about what's happening in South Africa, I will come back to you and I will tell you what's happening in South Africa for the last 20 years, how this struggle has been moving. But I must tell you, whatever we have achieved, I'm very proud of it because we don't have many Kashmiris here. And one thing is very ironic about South Africa is that outside the India, if there is a biggest diaspora community living anywhere else in the world, it is South Africa. Over 4 million Indian residents, and Mahatma Gandhi, granddaughter, and his extended family, all in South Africa. Almost South African parliament has been captured by the Indian lobbies. So whatever we have achieved, alhamdulillah, with your duas. And I must tell you that I think my dear brother, forget the most important, the most symbolic thing, the most historical case of a war crime against the Modi in the last 73 years. It was opened from this land by your brother Salman Khan. The war crime case, the warrant was issued, and Modi was scared to come to South Africa in 2016 to attend the BRICS conference. And I challenge, and I have been challenging the people and my leaders again and again. Do not have the ritualistic Kashmir Black Day. Do not have the Kashmir Solidarity. Let's do. कहते हैं कि जब उंगलियों से सीधा घी ना निकलो तो तिरछी कर लो. This is not the time of speeches and Facebook and YouTube. It's the time to hold the bull by the horn and take the might of India to its ground. And if Salman Khan, your brother, with a very little Kashmiris here in South Africa, can do a court case and bring the warrant of arrest to the Modi, I'm sure everybody and my leaders in the Europe, there are more than 3 million Kashmiris are living, and there are hundreds of the NGOs are in England and America. They should be taking the lead, and they should be actually opening the cases there. Let me discuss, and something very important that I want to discuss with you. Let's do the comparative study of the Nelson Mandela and the Nelson Mandela struggle from the South Africa of the ANC. Let me tell you what they have achieved with a very little, so much little of the people, those who managed to escape from the white dominated South African regime of the apartheid, those who managed to escape from South Africa was only 3,000. Out of the 3,000, only 500 or 600 of them was managed to get to the Europe and America. Within 27 years, they galvanized. They worked behind the one leader, one slogan, and they managed to get behind the Nelson Mandela when he was in a jail, and they managed to sold their struggle to the world, and they managed to bring the liberation to their people. My question to my dear brother and sister in Kashmiris, as the audience is Muslims and Kashmiris, what's wrong with the 3 million Kashmiris living in the world when the 3,000 less educated, less civilized people from the Africa can bring the liberation to their people. What's wrong with us? That we are 3 million out there in diaspora. We are unable to create any impact what we have today. And that's what I want to say. A brutal introspection and brutal critical analysis of our failure is we are not united. We are not united. I'm sure the Lord Qurban will tell you how many NGOs that we have. We are very good with creating the NGOs. We are very good with the Facebook. We are very good with the empty slogans, but we are not very good with uniting. I spoke into the George Bezos. He was the Mandela attorney when he was in. I asked him, my dear friend, my dear leader, tell me what can you do for me to help me? And he looked at me, what? I said, about the Kashmir. He said to me, Kashmir, Mr. Mandela want to help. But you know, Salman, what is your problem? I said, I do not know. He said, your case is more stronger, is more valid than the South Africa. But there is a vacuum of a leadership in your struggle. Who we must connect to, who we must listen to, who is there? Because every leader that we have on for the last 20, 30 years that I've been in struggle, everybody looking for an individualistic and Nobel Prize. How I can get a Nobel Prize, but they will never hold the hands together to be united behind. We need a one leader. We need a one slogan. As Dr. Mubin said, as the Lord Qurban said, we can have our different dukans, har ek aadmi apna manjan bech sakta hai, but we need to be united with the one thing. The right of the self-determination must be given to the people of Kashmir. That's a critical thing. As South Africa have over 500 different tribes and so many different political parties, over 1,000 political parties, but they said let's unite it onto the one cause, because international community will not support us. They united behind one thing. The black majority of the people, those was not given a right for a voting, they must be avail a vote. And the minute the voting, they given to them the right of the voting, the next thing was the liberation come, and then the history made. So my dear brother,
sorry to interrupt you, but you have a minute to wrap up, inshallah.
Okay, now let's see what the point of action. I said, let's not go back and look and cry over the split milk. Let's look at what can we do today and what should be doing when we come back next year. We should have a better plan and we should be more impactful. I offer a 5-pillar of the Lotus of strategy. Let's do 5 things, and if we can do the 5 things, then we should be able to see, we should be able to mobilize, and we should be able to move. Number one, international mass mobilization through the building of the strategic alliance internationally. Very important, the mass mobilization, that what we're doing. We need to move away from the struggle for the last 73 years. We need to convert the Kashmir as an true international movement. The second one, international litigation, that way we open the war crime case in South Africa. I'm sure it can be opened from the Europe, every country in the world, from the Malaysia to Europe. The third thing, digital media. Now at least we have a parallel media. Use it. Make your tasbih. The way you wake up in the morning, you make awaz after the fajr, you make subhanallah, alhamdulillah. Let's do the 2 tweets. Let's write onto the Facebook. Let's do the WhatsApp group. Let's whatever. The fourth thing is the BDS. Hit where the pain is. India is contracting its economy for the last 2 decades. Now let's hit them. That's where the pain is. Let's talk about the BDS in a proper manner, more cohesive manner. And the lastly, but not least, the Kashmiri struggle need to have a face. It need to have a one leader, a slogan. If the Kashmiri can come out with its own brand building, the people can be recognized. The Palestinian scarf is a recognition and a symbol of a solidarity. Why don't we have our own thing? Would like to say thank you for listening to me. And the last thing, I would like to offer my gratitude to all the Kashmiri struggle leaders and my heroes. ए कश्मीरी तेरी कश्मीरियत को सलाम करते हैं, ए कश्मीरी तेरी कश्मीरियत को सलाम करते हैं। हम तो उन माँ बहनों की अजमत को सलाम करते हैं जिनके दुपट्टे तले पले बड़े मेरे शोदा गाजी। हम तो उनकी हिम्मत को और अजमत को सलाम करते हैं। वाखिर दवाना वल्हम्दुलिल्लाहि व रब्बिल आलमीन।
Jazakumullah khairan, Brother Salman. I wish I could take a moment to translate those very powerful and beautiful words that you have concluded with, and amanullah to you and to all of us, inshallah.
Away too.
And I would like to go to now our hometown here in the United States. First to Dr. Imtiaz Khan, who is an internationally renowned immunologist and has published many manuscripts, peer-reviewed in high-impact journals. Dr. Khan is the section editor-chief of the journal Frontiers of Immunology. We need you badly during this pandemic, Brother Imtiaz. Dr. Khan serves the board of World Kashmir Awareness Forum, a nonprofit organization based here in Washington, D.C., whose mandate is to educate all of us here in the US and elsewhere, and also advocate for the freedom of Kashmir. And Dr. Khan will share his reflections and insight about if we should have any hope with the Biden administration. The floor is yours, Brother Imtiaz.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Thank you very much for providing me the opportunity to speak on this occasion. And my assalamu alaikum to all the panelists. Brother Salman Khan, I am really, basically amused and pleased both by you calling me your Rahbar. And Assalamu alaikum to Mubin Shah. I don't know, any of you know that we have been together since age 5 in school. That's the time. I'll not tell you how long we have known each other, but because by that time you'll know my age. It is little amusing to me that I have to speak on what we should expect from Biden administration, because this was a question which was put to WKA board about just a few days before the election, and I had to respond to it in a very, few sentences. I saw a lot of enthusiasm against my Kashmiri brothers and Pakistani brothers when the elections were going on. And if they voted for Biden just because of the domestic policies like education, healthcare, and immigration, and so on and so forth, I respect their decision. But if they voted for, especially our Kashmiri brothers, that he will bring change in some Kashmiri policy, I respectively disagree with their thoughts. Why I'm saying that, I don't want to sound like a doom and gloom guy. You take history into consideration. Now, the active movement for Kashmir took place in 89 and 90. See, at that time, George Bush 41 was the president of United States, which was followed by 8 years of Bill Clinton, a Democratic president from the Democratic Party. Then by George W. Bush 43, again a Republican president. Then by Obama for 8 years, again a president from the Democratic Party. If you look all the history about it, what they have done, even the presidents from the Democratic Party, as far as Kashmir is concerned, maximum they have issued a statement that, and it is not, they didn't talk about self-determination. They said India and Pakistan should hold negotiations, the confrontation should be avoided, and if we can help, we can come to their assistance. And most of the time, it was not the president who issued the statement. It didn't come from White House, except if my memory serves me right, once in the United Nations, Bill Clinton said that Kashmir can be the hotspot for the world because India and Pakistan can embark in a war which can prove disastrous to the world. That is as good as it got. Otherwise, you have a person from State Department issuing a statement that human rights abuses should be avoided, that democracy should be allowed to prevail. Now, this president served for 8 years as a vice president in Obama's administration. But we didn't hear any statement about Kashmir from him. I don't know why we think things will be dramatically different. Again, if you take history into consideration, Obama, when he was a candidate, Obama, he said he will basically appoint special envoy who will deal with India-Pakistan issue. He didn't do that. He visited India twice. Once, when he wanted to get that deal for the Boeing aircraft, which was in an economic quandary, he wanted that deal to be passed, which for $10 billion. And second time, he went when he was invited as a chief guest for Indian Republic Day. And there, we are talking of Trump being lovey-dovey with Modi. At that time, Modi used to, and he sat together, Modi poured tea in his cup, and he used to address him as Barack on a single name basis, first name basis. Presidential candidates, whatever they say, especially as far as the international affairs are concerned, they just don't fulfill those promises. George W. Bush, 43rd, in Michigan, when he was facing a tough primary from Senator McCain, he said that Arab Americans, because Michigan has a lot of Arab population, he said that Arab Americans are being discriminated, and during his presidency, he would like to change that. As soon as he was elected president, there was some foreign delegation, and I think Yasser Arafat was part of it. He gave him a royal snub, he even didn't want to acknowledge him. And the rest, what he did was history. When the presidents enter the White House and they get the security briefing, and they are being told by the Pentagon or the State Department or CIA that this is the situation, and the only question which he discusses with his aides is, where do American interests lie? And decision is based on that hard and solid fact. America looks at a larger picture, like any other countries or superpowers, where the American interests lie. Saddam Hussein was a president of Iraq from 1970 to 2004. From 1970 to 1990, he was a brutal dictator at that time. He was involved in gross human rights violations. But at that time, he fitted into that American picture. He was an ally of America because he was fighting a war against Iran, and America gave him intelligence information, so on and so forth. But as soon as in 1990, his interests clashed with American interests, that is the time America acted. There was a war in Iraq, and finally he was disposed of. We have to take into consideration what will it take to India to come, not to hold a right of self-determination, that's a far-off thing, but to come to negotiating table. Right now, India is not interested to come to negotiating table with Pakistan, under the pretext that Pakistan should stop the so-called terrorist activities, which, for the sake of your information, recently it was released in Indian press that this Balakot and Pulwama thing was all orchestrated. One of their darling press representative, guy from Republic TV, he already knew about 4 days before, and this was done to help a particular party, meaning the Bharatiya BJP, Modi's party.
Dr. Khan, sorry to interrupt. You have 2 minutes to wrap up.
Oh my God. So the question is, I agree, I have a lot to say, but for the sort of laxity of time, we don't expect a lot from the Biden administration. Because of the change in the geopolitical situation, China becoming the frontline ally of India, India will be continually receive the weapons, intelligence reports, and because we Americans like to do like somebody else to do our dirty work, and India will be involved in China, and America will be the gross exporter, and they will look other way whatever India does with Kashmir and whatever human rights violations India is involved. In my last 1 or 1.5 minutes, what is left, I agree with both the earlier speakers. We should not highlight on just human rights violations. Human rights violation is the symptom of the disease. And unless we cure the disease itself, that is denial of right of self-determination. That's why this diaspora basically make a serious mistake from August 5th. All the senators and congressmen they approached, they talked about human rights violation, human rights violation. Only one congressman in that hearing, Ila Umar, she mentioned right of self-determination. I agree with Dr. Salman Khan. We have to speak with one voice. And we don't, when we hold these meetings, we should not talk so much of right of self-determination, this human rights violations. Diaspora has itself lots of problems. They are short of funds. In this country, what works is money power. We don't have any lobbying agencies. We cannot approach these important senators. The whole strategy has to be changed. We have to re-strategize. These seminars, what my friend Dr. Fai was telling me, there are 190 webinars. But we should not have said it, have it as a token on 14th of July, on this and that. Every day today in Kashmir is a black day.
Right.
We have to strategize. And the current strategy, the earlier policies which have failed should be changed. Unless we do that, Biden administration will not do anything for us. Thank you very much. I wish I had more time, but
I know. Jazakallah khair, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. Yes, power never concedes. And absolute power corrupts absolutely, as we all know. With that, we'll go to the next speaker, dear sister, Professor Atharzia, a political anthropologist, poet, short fiction writer, and a columnist. She is an associate professor in the Department of Anthropology and Gender Studies at the University of Northern Colorado, Greeley. And Athar is the author of Resisting Disappearances, Military Occupation and Women's Activism in Kashmir, which won an award in 2020. And she is the co-editor of Can You Hear Kashmiri Women Speak? Resisting Occupation in Kashmir and a Desolation Called Peace. She has published a poetry collection called The Frame, or the title The Frame, and another collection which I cannot wait for to get my hands on, inshallah, will come soon. In 2013, Professor Athar's ethnographic poetry in Kashmir has won an award from the Society for Humanistic Anthropology, and she is the founder editor of Kashmir Literature and is the co-founder of Critical Kashmir Studies Collective, which is an interdisciplinary network of scholars working on the Kashmir region. Professor Athar will share her remarks today on the topic of garnering global solidarity for Indian occupied Kashmir. Dr. Athar, the floor is yours. Unmute yourself. You're still muted if you can hear us. Yeah. Oh.
There's a mic sign.
It should be to your left, bottom left icon. Oh, it's the. Can you plug in the chat box whatever the difficulty is, and we'll see if we can solve it. You were just fine a minute ago or some few minutes ago. Your computer is stuck. You can reboot, perhaps. That will be the only option. So while you're rebooting, I might use a couple of minutes for a quick, short question, perhaps, to Dr. Shah, while Sister Athar is rebooting and coming back. Dr. Shah, you have, one of your posts talked about settler colonialism. And so, can you talk a little bit in maybe a minute or so until Sister Athar comes back as to why do you call settler colonialism? Who is the settler and who is being colonized? I think I know the answer, but I like audience to know this really.
The settlers are the people whom they are giving these domicile certificates, which I mentioned. They have already given 3.5 million certificates, and out of them, 2 million are non-state subjects, actually, non-state subjects. And they are the people who are going to colonize. And there's another very important thing which I was not able to tell because of limited time, that they have declared certain areas as security areas in which a lot of land is being given to the army and other people, and where they do not have to take any permission from the local authorities. For example, in each district, they are going to give those lands. For example, in Srinagar district itself, they have given 3 different areas and very prime areas. We people in Kashmir know Totu Ground, the BB Camp. They have given this whole area to them where they can build anything, do anything they want. And this is where, and now they are going to do it in all districts. So result will be what? There they will create these settler colonies. And this is why I had written against it in on my Facebook post, and they registered an FIR against me, and gave me and put a case against me, and I am fighting it in the court of law. The problem is that we can go on fighting in the court of law because we have to understand that the courts, unfortunately, in India are a facade for Kashmiris at least. They are an extension of the executive, nothing else. They are only an alibi to the government of India to tell the world we have our own justice system. That justice system is all buggered up towards India. That is how you could get a decision for the till today they are not deciding or not even lifting the case of the Article 370, which has been gone to the Supreme Court. People have gone to the Supreme Court, where they will change the whole ground situation, and then they will say it is not possible to change again. So that is what is basically the settler and this is a model. Unfortunately, they have taken from Israel and Palestine. Whatever you see, if you see the map of 1960s of Palestine and see the map now, you will see the difference. This is going to happen. I hope it does not happen, but it can happen in Kashmir also.
Thank you so much, Shah. I think Sister Athar is back, and I hope is working great.
Looks like it's working.
All yours. Bismillah.
Thank you so much, Shakil Bhai, and everyone else in the panel, and the ICNA Council for Social Justice for organizing this. I just want to take a moment to say that it's really incredible that we're all still here. We are still thinking about Kashmir in the manner that people 72 years ago had envisioned what this region would be, whether that's right to self-determination, whether that's, whatever that contains. So I would like to take a moment for that I do think this journey, this is a measure of success. It might be symbolic at this moment, but I think the incredible level of thinking and organization against this big nation state that is at the current moment in full glory as a Hindu supremacist, fascist, ethno-nationalist state. So I think that's a moment we should all take and think about Kashmir in terms of how to garner global solidarity. I think I'm being in in research and writing, I think primarily for me, it is all about the discourse. And when we think about Kashmiri narrative or Kashmir narrative and the discourse that's going around globally and that India has propagated in the last 72 years, I think it is important for us to kind of consider when we say changing the narrative. For me, there's an original narrative around Kashmir, which was in 1947 that this was an international dispute, and it is tripartite. Even before India and Pakistan were formed, Kashmir already was there. So the Kashmir issue predates even formation of these two states. And when I talk about the Kashmir discourse and why I have slight trouble with changing the narrative, I feel like it's more than changing the narrative. We have to return back to the narrative. Kashmir is already internationalized. It has to be re-internationalized because for the last 40 years, as Dr. Mubin and everyone else have laid out the history and what has been happening, I think Kashmir was really subsumed by India under an internal dispute, law and order issue, domestic issue, and after 1971, when the Shimla Agreement happened, Kashmiris were essentially thrown out from the discourse, and it became an India-Pakistan issue. And that is exactly when the ceasefire line becomes the line of control, which Kashmiris don't really see in the same manner that the global community sees. And so from 1971 onwards, what we see is this really heavy shift in the discourse, especially from the Indian side. The narrative kind of becomes about that this is not an international dispute. This is an internal disturbance. And then after what we see happening after 1989 is that complete shift of the narrative happens, and now it's a proxy war. So I think when we are trying to garner global solidarity, we really have to cut through several veils and several obfuscations that the Indian narrative has installed between the global community and the Kashmiris. So, and after 9/11, this becomes even more problematic because when you have a Muslim issue, there is a danger, there's an absolute danger of the issue again being subsumed under a massive Islamophobia, thinking about it not as a resistance, not as people's struggle, but as terrorism. So I think we have to kind of think about all of that, and we have to detox the narrative. We have to go back to the original narrative and tell the international community that Kashmir is not something of a bilateral dispute. It's a trilateral dispute where there are three parties involved. And Kashmir dispute predates the formation of these two post-colonial nations. So part of that debate also is thinking about Kashmir in 1947, what exactly happened in those moments, and how were Kashmiris placed in that moment, and also thinking about India as a country. I think that is something that the global community, and I think that has already been said in so many different ways. I just want to kind of reiterate that it's very, very important that we tell the global community about what the heart of India is when it pertains to Kashmir and when it pertains to some other marginalized communities that live inside its ambit. So first and foremost, we do have to see India as a neo-colonial, currently as an ethno-nationalist Hindu supremacist state. And in that, we also have two different dichotomies. There is the issue of Indian Muslims, and then you have the Kashmiri Muslims. There is a danger on the international level that when we think about the issue of Muslims in India, that Kashmiris might be subsumed under it. So that's another conversation you need to have with the international community, that it might come under the rubric of how India is trying to make Muslims as these foreigners and as usurpers and as the hegemons of the past. But Kashmir is a different issue. It might come under that rubric, but Kashmir is an issue that is not fighting to stay within India or for its rights within Indian constitution, but they want a state of its own, or they want right to self-determination, whether that be acceding to Pakistan, or there is a set of client politicians with whose help India has been able to set up regimes and collaborations and client state basically inside Kashmir to carry India's water. So that conversation is also very important. So at the level of discourse, I feel that we do have to detox. And I think it goes into everything that has been said before, whether Dr. Mubin, whether Brother Salman, everyone else has talked about the kind of toolkit that we need to have. So I feel all of that goes down and boils down to the level of what's the discourse and how do you make these linkages and collaborations. And the other important lens is the decolonial lens, because Kashmiris are indigenous people, they are native people, and there are different ethnicities, no doubt. And then thinking about the settler colonial states, and in that being very honest with United States' own heart, that it is a settler colonial state, there are indigenous peoples here, and how to have conversations with them. And that's where we kind of step into a conversation for the future, not just looking at the past, how Kashmir has been made ahistoric, but also looking towards the future of how people are envisioning their indigenous rights. And Kashmir at this present moment, if we pass through all these veils and cut through all these veils of Islamophobia, of thinking about Kashmir as a terrorism issue, because there is always that danger, and India is making it more and more palpable as if it is a terrorism issue. And the world is very easy in that to buy because it's a predominantly Muslim state. So that has to be considered, like how to have that conversation with indigenous peoples. And in the last 2 years, what we have seen, especially after India militarily and unilaterally and unconstitutionally against its own constitution took away the autonomy of Kashmiris, the quasi-autonomy, which Dr. Mubin already talked about. So we have seen there are conversations with indigenous groups and solidarities are being created. But the first level is how to have this discourse with them, how to detox the Kashmir discourse, how to clarify what has been obfuscated for the last 72 years by India, by really, really making this black and white about Pakistan's proxy war. And I think that's where we also have to engage with history a little bit. Like, how did this region even look before 1947? What were the linkages between Kashmiris and what now is Pakistan? And why is it that there might be an affective relationship between Pakistanis and the Kashmiris? And why should it always be so normal to think that this is a relationship of some kind of deviance? Because it's very easy for India to show Kashmiris as deviants, Kashmiris as terrorists, especially when it comes to Kashmiri men. They are shown as if they are the demons, the patriarchal, for lack of a better word, the stereotypical Islamic patriarch who is being repressive of its women. And that's another way that conversation is being had. And here I should mention, when the autonomy was taken away by India militarily in 2019, what ended up happening was that they used the strawman argument of development, that they're going to develop Kashmir. It was very easy for the entire world to buy it, because development is seen as something very progressive, and it's seen as something bringing people into modernity. And I think that's where we kind of start thinking about the neoliberal economic order, where which we have to engage with again, and tell the world that this is not development, this is mal development, this is actually neo-colonial mal development in the name of quote-unquote development that is happening for Kashmiri people. And also think about how Kashmir is not an issue that happened in 2019. The policy that India has had from 1947 onwards has been steady erosion of what was the autonomy. And again, we also have to understand what autonomy was. It was actually an agreement between client politicians and the Indian state, where people were still in every decade waiting for the plebiscite. And again, whereas on one side, 370 had the protection of 35A, where Kashmiris had territorial sovereignty. As a result, India could not do any settler colonialism, at least not brazenly. But at the same time, it did pass laws which slowly over the years, in the last 72 years, has criminalized the movement for plebiscite, has criminalized any form of dissent. And that also came through C-370. So Kashmiris have had a very fraught relationship with autonomy as well. So all of these are nuances that we have to have in this conversation with the international audience, because or international collaborations or international solidarities that we are looking forward to having, because the obfuscation is so deep and obfuscation is so vile, and in that there's a clear dichotomy where on one hand we do have to talk about how India, which considers itself to be one of the most largest and biggest whatever democracy in Asia, we also have to go back to thinking about how electoral democracy is even possible inside Kashmir when in 1947, when you think about United Nations and the Security Council issuing an order saying that this is an out of order election that is being happened in 1951. So even that electoral democracy, which I see as a politics of democracy that is being carried inside Kashmir at this present moment, and which is being sold as democracy to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world has no problems in buying it. But then this anomaly of how is it possible that you have so many human rights violations? How is it possible to have so many troops, that Kashmir today is one of the most militarized zones, one of the most densest militarized zones in the world? How is this possible? Like, how is a democracy able to do this? So these contrasting issues and all of the things, engaging with history and engaging with what the heart of India is at the present moment, I think these are very important questions that we have to have at the very fundamental level of an international discourse that we're having currently. And all of those collaborations that we're thinking about, be they with indigenous people, be they with academics, be they with thinking about BDS, that comes from the level of information. And this information needs to be detoxified. And this particular thing that in Kashmir is not an issue from 1947. It predates the making of India and Pakistan. It's an issue even before that of provincial democracy, or some prototype of democracy that you want to say, or a constitutional monarchy, or whatever the people were thinking of at that time. They have evolved from that point onwards, and we need to have that conversation. So I feel the level of discourse is very, very important to all of the things that have been said before. And the mobilization, because we are talking about mobilization, it involves people, it involves reaching out to groups, and that involves honest, and that involves a detoxed, narrative around Kashmir that has been detoxed from the propaganda that India has been able to wield for the last 72 years, just because it has played the politics of democracy so well inside Kashmir. It has told the world that we are holding elections that somehow kind of stands for referendum. And that's not true. Kashmiris have a clear view on what kind of politics that they are into. They have a clear politics of governance, and they have a clear politics of azadi. If you talk to even a minor shopkeeper somewhere, they will tell you that when people are occupied, they can have governance. But you cannot extract and exploit their resources the way India is doing at this present moment. And these things need to be made clear. There is no obfuscation on Kashmir issue. The obfuscation is only that India has been very, very successful in selling its narrative. And I think in the last 15 years, what's been happening with critical Kashmir studies academics, and there are different groups, people are coming together, publishing books, having talks and collaborations, and the activists who have already worked for the last 45 years in United States, in UK, and some of them are here as well. My kudos to them, my compliments to them for keeping this alive. And I think this is the moment where we can bring all of this thinking together and really decolonize the Kashmir narrative. That's where I'd like to stop and maybe take further questions when we have the conversation. Thank you.
Very kind of you, Sister Athar, for sharing these reflections. And there are so many layers indeed to the plight, the struggle of the Kashmiri people, and detoxification and decolonization certainly is in the core and the center of it. I so wish that we can continue this conversation for long, but we are into about 90 minutes in the program, and it's with a sense of pain, emotional pain. I would like to conclude, but not before thanking each one of you for taking your time this morning. And certainly this is a response, our response, for the record, that we are neither going to forget nor ever going to stop resisting and fighting for the full freedom for our brothers and sisters in Kashmir. So today is just a symbolic gesture of ours, reminding ourselves and reaffirming our commitment to this struggle. And I also like to thank ICNA CSJ for allocating and dedicating time and resources for today. I would conclude with this. Sister Athar wrote the frame, or shared her most heartfelt thoughts in poetic reflections in the frame. And one of her poems is dedicated for those who were tortured to death, and some who survived from the place called Hari Nivas. For those of us who are not familiar with Hindi language, Hari Nivas translates to abode of God. And in this abode of God, people's lives were taken. And the title of the poem itself is the abode of God. So I would like to, with your permission, Sister Athar, if you allow me to share some few lines from this, and then we will conclude. The title of the poem is Abode of God, and goes as follows. A phantasm above, I am the bones under this earth, where you plan to plant tulips, daffodils, so dear to my soil, trying to cover wide-mouthed pits, filled with shoes, limbs, amulets, for protection, unblinking eyes. A first love's charm bracelet, husbands, sons, lovers, fathers. Your rooms are clinging to their walls. The abode of God looks less so. No diviner dare carry a broom to erase my trace. In this dank darkness, tinged red, I am not yet done etching tremulous lines on walls. I am not done memorizing faces that are gone. I am not done counting and keeping time which passed. There are still dead, dying in certain rooms. And indeed, I am not done. We as collective are not done. And none of us can ever be done until Kashmir is fully free. Azadi to Kashmir, Amandala, and power to the people.
Await.
Thank you so much. God bless you, and may you have a wonderful rest of the day. And I
Thank you.
appreciate you taking the time. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.